Hello and welcome to ThePrint. Today we have with us Vikram Sampath and Sandeep Singh. Vikram and Sandeep are the founders of NAAV-AI, an AI-based platform which will render translation services. So for starters, Vikram, can you tell us about where the idea of this startup came from and what you sort of plan to seek through it?
Thanks, Antara. It's nice to talk to you about something other than history on which we usually connect. So now AI, our company, it's about 4 to 5 months old now. And it was sheer serendipity. It just happened by a happy accident. As you know, I'm a published author, and to get my books translated into Indian languages was the biggest challenge. Being, in Bangalore, it took almost 15, 16 years to get my books into Kannada, the local language here. And it's not as if there is no demand or interest for good content in Indian languages. There is a lot of appetite for it. But I think the supply is simply unable to meet that demand because, translation process itself is very lengthy, laborious, slow, manual intervention, and so on. So I was just discussing this with my friend Sandeep, who comes from a totally different background of technology and digital transformation, saying, is there any technological solution for this problem? And that's how we very serendipitously in a coffee shop, I think, hit upon this idea. And one thing led to the other. We were very fortunate to get a lot of early help from some big leaders in the domain, including Bhavesh Agarwal, the founder of Ola and of Ola Kritrim, and also Asha Jadeja Motwani, US-based philanthropist and angel investor. So with their help, we put NAV together, and as I said, it's just been 4 to 5 months, but it almost, looking back for both of us, it feels like we've already covered a long journey in this path.
And now, Sandeep, can you tell us kind of about the process that goes on behind this? So, are our existing AI models and our data sets, what we have in the public domain, are they equipped to deal with translations?
So the way, the current LLM models, the foundation models are trained enough to generate like a decent translation, in primarily from English to other languages. But when it comes to the Indic context, a lot of these models do not have the required amount of data set, primarily because most of it was all built in English, and then it lacks that context. But over the last few months, the way these companies have been able to train the models has been exponential. And with this, we are able to generate the output which is required for the translation, the first cut. But again, the first cut is not good enough for it to be published. Right? And there has to be a particular specific pipeline specific to the use case that is required in order to ensure that the output is refined enough to be published when it comes to the books. Because when it comes to the books, it is the context, the nuances, and other aspects which is very important while doing the translation. So yeah, existing models provides a good first cut, but there needs to be a very specific pipeline and customization for particular use cases to get the required outcome. And having said that, these some of the bigger models like Claude and GPT are very good with the translation, but again, not for big context, right? Not for books for say 100 to 1,000 pages, but they have started working on it, and there are a lot of but I think when it comes to the Indian context, we still lack. There is a lot of room to desire more from these models, and I think the Indian government kind of understands this, and there's a lot more work being done in order to develop some of these foundation models in India. So there is, government India AI push which is happening, and
Yeah, we have AI for Bharat as
AI for
well.
Bharat, and so there is almost like 10,000 GPUs which is available for 50 plus companies who are working currently. So with this, a lot of companies focusing on Indic related LLM foundation models, I see that it's going to change really rapidly in coming months and over the years, where the translation will be really good from these models.
I think some like Sarvam AI.
Yeah, Sarvam, Kritrim. Yes, these are doing as of now, I think we tested actually Kritrim as a first model for us to test, and we were able to get a very good output and results from those close to 60-70% accuracy for some of the Indian languages.
So that's quite decent, right?
And some are, I
60,
think, specific
70%.
language project industry.
Exactly. So there are foundation models which is kind of doing generic. For example, Claude, and similar to that, there are Indian models. Kritrim is a generic LLM model, but there are very specific companies who are working on specific language models. There is Tamil Lama, which is very specifically designed for Tamil language, and then there is Indus Project, which is from Tech Mahindra, that caters to Hindi and few
It's
other
dialects.
Yeah, and Hindi and
It's dialects
of Hindi. Yeah. So like this, there are several other models which is coming within India, and I think that so the way we are working in now is primarily all of these LLM models are basically we partner with them. It's not a competition because these are all partners because we are using these models under the hood in order to build the platform and with our customized.
So you are also have plans, or you are building your own text translation platform as well, right? Translate.
Yeah, so Translate.
So could you tell us about that?
Yeah.
And again, how you plan on sort of using and leveraging these existing models?
Right. So Translate to tell basically it's translation of literature. So that's how it's formed. So the main purpose here is to translate the literature work. Now again, it doesn't have to be restricted to the literature. Basically we caters to all kind of books and content. In terms of for Translate, we are using some of these LLM models to create the first cut of translation, and then we have a pipeline in order to ensure that it is well refined, reviewed, and there is a human element, because when it comes to literature, there is apprehensions within the creative industry that the AI would generate a machine generated output, which may not be that it might lack context and several other things. So yeah, we are ensuring that we have that pipeline and we have teams of dedicated language experts as well as translators for specific languages in order to ensure that the final output has that creative element to it before it goes for publish. So that's how we have built the Translate platform.
I think what to add briefly to what Sandeep said, most often I think the apprehension, as he mentioned, in the creative industry, and me being an author myself, is AI going to eat up jobs? Is that something that's going to replace the human being? No, I think the human being in the loop, as he said, is irreplaceable. What we are trying to achieve is reduce the turnaround times. So if a book would take 4 months to translate for a human being, now probably in a couple of weeks it could be done. So in the same time, several more books can be translated.
Now, of course, human activities can be augmented by AI, but translation, as we know, is, it's extremely specialized. It's extremely specialized. It's a very slow, very deliberate process. Now, while of course AI can hasten that process, do you think that it can still bring in that same sort of, diligence? Because translation is so much detail that goes into it. So how do you think AI can sort of come into that, enter that sphere?
So, the process, as we said, like in order to reduce the overall process of the translation, which was earlier taking almost maybe 5 months for a book of 200, 300 pages. Now with this, we can reduce the first cut, maybe the first level of translation, we can get it in an hour or half an hour time, or even less than that. And then the rest of it, which is primarily, a few hours a week of a time, in order to refine this content. And as part of that refinement is where we make sure that the due diligence of ensuring the creative elements are part of it, the context is all intact, the way the book should be, or the English version of that book had. So all of that due diligence is taken care as part of this review process of the human element that we are keeping intact as part of this entire process. So that takes care of it. So two things, efficiency and as well as ensuring that the required due diligence and the context and all the creative elements are intact as part of that execution. So that's how we are doing it.
And the accuracy seems to vary from language to language. Hindi was very good, almost 70-75%. We have done currently in 6 languages, which is Hindi, Marathi, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam. The South Indian languages were still better, about 60-65%. Marathi was quite bad to start off with.
So Marathi would be how much? What
55% maybe. And so I think it doesn't understand some nuances of the language. the way the phrases are constructed or idiomatic expressions, something which is very linguistic specific. So I think what I understand as an outsider to technology is that it's almost like teaching a child a language. So as and how our pipeline increases, we now have done a first set of books. Maybe after 30, 40, 50 books, the model would then understand. And to what Sandeep mentioned, the human in the loop is not just refining the output text. There is a feedback mechanism which is going from him or her to the model, saying next time you encounter an issue like this, please put this kind of phrase. So constantly with every book, every page, I think it is learning something new and thereby it improves.
Now, since you mentioned the books, so we have some books here. Can you tell us about the books you chose as your first books? Why those particular books and why you felt that they would sort of be malleable in order to integrate into your module?
So we were actually very fortunate to also get an early client in the form of Blue One Ink Publishers, one of India's leading new age publishing houses, who trusted us and our product. And they were our partners also with the other foundation that I have established, FIHCR, the Foundation for Indian Historical and Cultural Research. So there a particular vertical is called Yuva, which is to make Indian history interesting, exciting, inspiring for children and young adults. And as part of that, lots of these books were what we were bringing out with children's authors. Now, these three books which have come out, Cool Leaders of India by Pradeep Chakravarti, and The Missing Rocks of Hampi by Mala Kumar from Bangalore, and The Rise of Ancient Indians by Vijender Sharma. So these three books, we brought it out in English. But then we were discussing also that, we assume that English is really read and understood by everyone, whereas 5 to 6% of India reads books in English. So in our elitist bubble, we can think, that we are doing something earth-shattering, but actually for all this content, good quality, textual or whatever other content to reach to the people of India, I think it has to be translated into local languages. So, and these were children's books, so the language was simpler, and the its size is also just like about 100 pages. So we thought this is a good start, and we'll also feel happy that low-hanging fruits, which first sense of achievement and our first revenue also.
This has been a successful experiment. Your first,
yes. So these three books translated into 6 languages, so which is 18 books are actually going to come out next month.
And we were able to gauge even the the correctness of our model, because these were the first set of books that we wanted to check and also understand and complete this feedback loop of the translators providing data sets for us to improve. So I think we have been able to test that entire end-to-end cycle along with these books as part of this entire process. And also it helped us to kind of gather a lot more inputs from the language people to understand what all changes that we can do in our platform and pipeline to increase the efficiency for that second level of the human part of it. Because for us, it's very important. The first cut can happen in an hour, right? But the second cut, which is to improve within human input, now that shouldn't take too long. And that is important for us to make it that efficient as well. So we had to understand and get feedback from them as part of this process to improve our platform and tool to make that more efficient so that the review can also happen faster. So the overall turnaround time is reduced. So that's.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the other vertical that you're trying to get into is the audiobook space. Now, that's already quite a buzzy space in itself. So what do you envisage your target audiences being? Are there specific subjects you want to get into that you think will sort of bring a larger audience? And how do you look at this part of the sort of business?
As part of the now, we wanted to cater to both the text context of it, of literature, and also because a lot of behavior of right now it's changing with people consuming more data or more content through internet and digital content. So we wanted to cater to the digital audience as well. So audiobook, it's not just for audiobooks, but we want, as part of this audio content platform, you can say it's more like a Netflix, for audio, right? We want to cater to all genre of content, which can be a podcast, it can be spiritual content, health and wellness, finance. So, and basically a diverse set of target audience. It can, starting from a student who's, wants to learn something and learn quick finance, right? It can be a housewife who wants to learn how to cook and all of those aspects.
Okay. So everything under the sun you want.
All form of content using, so what we are doing is we are trying to enable using AI to create this content in different Indian languages. So it is possible there is a content which is available, but they want to host it and have that in multiple different languages. And that's a limitation right now. So we will be able to enable that we can actually create that content in multiple different languages and have it hosted in our on platform. So that's how we are going to kind of cater to various different audience.
So also similar to say what we're seeing now on YouTube as well, now that they've also integrated a bunch of translation into their videos. So similar to that, so but an individual platform. Yeah.
We want to make sure that there is AI as the backbone of this, right? Because we want to have more and more content, which is important, and also support multiple Indian languages as part of this. So the process of, for an audiobook, right? For example, it might take close to a few weeks or a month to month to record one audiobook for it to have. So with this process using AI, we'll be able to generate that within few hours and then have the human element to refine it better and host it on.
So the translation will be we can achieve in a few hours.
Yes, the translated output and text to audio creation. So for example, these books, right? There might be publishers who wants to create audiobooks, right? Yeah. So we will be able to create those audiobooks and host it on our platform.
Yeah. And I mean, the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah.
We have mobile, penetration of about 62%, and internet penetration itself risen in the country to 55%. And we were quite, it was interesting to know that 98% of Indian internet users consume content in Indian languages. Yes. So, that's such a vast, untapped, potential who are craving for content. It's not just that the demand and supply mismatch, which is not existing.
And audio alone is going to grow, and which has been
Audio
growing.
books.
Audiobook alone is going to be close to 1.5 billion in by 2030. So there is a lot of growth in terms of just audiobooks. So you can imagine the rest of the audio content, right? There's huge scope for the growth.
Now to, return to sort of the world of books and of literature. So, we're constantly, while we're seeing a great deal of movement in, as you mentioned, the sheer quantity of people who are watching, listening to content, so to speak. But when it comes to books, and say narratives, literature, we're constantly hearing that, no one is reading anymore. And even what certain publishing houses say that the idea is not to churn out more, but the idea is also to get people to read what is already available and what is already existing. And that's where, marketing comes in. So, what do you believe about this, given that you are entering into a space where you're talking about, maximum output and you talk about more and more? So
I wouldn't even agree to the fact that Indians are not reading more, because if that was so, the numbers would be very different. I mean, the Ernst and Young report, which came on the Indian publishing industry, pegs the publishing industry at about 10.6 billion in 2024, rising to close to 17 billion by US dollars by the end of the decade. India is the second largest publisher of books in English, and it's the overall, if you take all the Indian languages too, it's the sixth largest publisher. Every year 5 to 10 lakh books are being published. There are 9,000 publishers. And and this whole desire of self-published authors who don't go to these big names and so on. So people want their voices to be heard. And as Sandeep mentioned, the consumption patterns may be different. It may not be long form books. It's not true that people are not consuming content. They may have changed their consumption patterns. Someone is listening to digital, you're stuck in a traffic jam in a city like Bangalore. And that's why long format podcasts or Spotify, content, people are just hooking onto them and hearing it. So I think this content that is available, even that, to make it accessible through various media and platforms that people are consuming. I think that is where the key is. So even if we're generating new content out of existing content and creating some new extra content too. So I think that is where we are trying to fill a major gap in content creation and distribution.
Yeah, because as we know, the volume is enormous, and it's also, I think, difficult for people to make decisions regarding what kind of content they want to consume. That's also, I think, another big problem that, say, people of this generation are facing, because you are so inundated with content in all forms.
And that same report also says, I mean, the audiobooks that Sandeep was mentioning about the growth, that is largely going to be driven in the next decade through tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities and their consumption.
And which consumes in Indian language.
But you mentioned that that's not necessarily audiobooks, right? It's all forms of audio content.
Yes.
It's just about putting all of these very disparate sort of things under one content umbrella,
in
right?
different Indian languages.
In different,
yes.
yeah.
To grow that basically, in tier 2 and tier 3 as well, because that's where the growth is right
Yeah.
now in terms of the content consumption in regional languages. So we want to cater to that primarily. So all podcasts and audiobooks and all other forms of
and
audio content.
that product which we're developing is called Zunao, playing on Sunao. So Zunao FM is the platform which should be out soon.
All right. And now just to ask you, Vikram, given that, you're an author, a researcher, very much, immersed in the world of books. I mean, it would seem quite almost antithetical for you now to be in this AI world. So how has, working with AI been for you? Has it made you realize that, okay, there are certain limitations? Has it made you realize more that, okay, about, capability and creativity? How has that the experience been like?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, Antara, because prior to becoming a historian, I was an engineer and a mathematician. So it's some way going back to those roots. And working with someone who is a friend and a small team, which is so committed and dedicated, it also opens us to the fact, as you mentioned, limitations of technology, but what it can do to enable and help solve problems which people, communities, or the country faces. In the process, I think we are also reaching out to several of the contacts that I have developed in the publishing industry, which is what probably brings that competitive advantage to NAAV-AI as well. So we are in the process of almost finalizing a few MOUs with some international publishers. So building a larger pipeline. Very, very grateful to all of them, Blue One Ink and Bhavesh and Asha and others who reposed faith in us. So it's been a new journey, and a journey of an entrepreneur is always fraught with a lot of uncertainty. I think in the last 4-5 months, we've had our panic attacks, we've had our ups and downs, but I think we've kept the faith in the product and in ourselves to be able to move forward in this.
And we do have another friend of ours who is part of the group, Shravan. He's been extremely helpful in order to get us onboarded with the latest AI technologies. Also, it's been a great journey. So I think by now Vikram knows all these
AI
terminologies and all of that. So he's able to handle most of it on his own, actually. So that's been the
Shravan has built startups himself.
Yes,
he has a couple of patents to his name, and so I think it's a nice coming together of diverse complementary skills.
So now last question. Now I just want to ask you where you see the sort of company in the next 5 years, given that there will, at least we imagine, or in all likelihood, there'll be a great deal of advancement, right, in AI technologies as well. So how do you see those two things working in tandem? Say your company coming up as well as the advancement in AI technology. So this is addressed to both of you. So where do you see it in the next 5 years?
I guess, as I was telling you earlier as well, the AI models is always going to be the foundation of what we are building. So we are building a use case on top of the existing foundation model. So if these LLM models get better and better with more and data sets and for more languages, it actually makes it easier for us to build multiple use cases on top of it. So the first use case was about text to text translation in multiple Indian languages, right? And the next use case which we are trying to build, again, because the technology is improved so much in terms of speech synthesis and on the voice cloning and all of those aspects, we're able to utilize that technology to build the another platform, which is Zunav, which we are talking, because all of those are going to be the aspect that we will be offering as part of this platform. So the way these LLM models in the foundation or these bigger models evolve, it is going to help us, in fact, to build a lot more of those use cases in audio, literature, book, and all these other, primarily within this, which we are trying to focus right now. So I think it's going to be an enabler for us more than anything, because these all of these LLM models do have limitations, right? In case of books, for example, you cannot translate 1,000 pages book in one shot. So it requires certain customizations. It requires companies to build their own layers on top of these foundation models to kind of get that output. And I think that's where we will have this unique offering that we are building within this, within the domain of audio and books. We're building. So we do see as a next step, right? We're starting because it's just been 3-4 months that we have kind of started a very first set of books. So we are concentrating first on the text translation to improve that, because there's a long process of refinement, which we also want to do it as a layer on top of these foundation model. So we are doing that, and then next would be to build this AI enabled audio platform, and then at some stage we want to expand in terms of the languages too, right? India is definitely something which has already some 21 22
enormous
languages.
wealth of language.
So I think that itself is a huge market that we are currently focusing on, but it also enables us to focus on international market, right? There's a lot of scope when it comes to international languages of content being translated in German or in Arabic, and even in South Asian countries. And I think that is where we also want to pivot into and then grow. As an organic growth, we want to start with the Indian and Indic languages, but we want to grow into these markets as well. So that's how I see, I think, and as much as possible with this enhancement of the foundation models and their data set, it's going to help us do this faster.
Yeah, I think he summed up most of it. So we really want, and we were discussing this before. I think Indian story is going to an international market. We are speaking this at a time when, from this very city and state, we have Banu Mushtaq, the Kannada author, whose work, which was pigeonholed in some small place in Karnataka, suddenly comes into the global mass media, and that is the power of translation. And today her books are being translated into 50 plus languages, both Indian and foreign. I think Indian stories deserve to be heard in not only by other Indians. So I think along with going global, integration within India. I mean, why should a Kannada story not be conveyed to a Bengali and a Gujarati hearing an Assamese, book in his language? So our tagline too is AI that helps bridge the linguistic divide at a time when we are clamoring and fighting for languages, including in Karnataka and Maharashtra and other places. I think technology can be an enabler to bring communities together. And if this can, why not? And as Sandeep mentioned earlier, I think we want to be the next Netflix for audio in the coming couple of years, and see how that goes. Fingers crossed.
All right, wonderful. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you, Antara.
Thank you, Antara. Thanks.
Thank you.